Kislev, will they beat the Vampire Coast? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that is to look at the factions that can. Right off the bat, let's look at this anti-coast classic from the High Elves. This build works because bolt throwers will shut down coast artillery while also killing deck gunners. Alariel provides ample magic damage, and there is cheap cavalry to protect the archers from dogs. Not to mention the great front line that can put pressure on coast after the bombers are dead, and armor piercing damage from the Mage of Metal so that crab rushes are not too much of an issue. Against a build like this, the bolt throwers are so effective versus the anti-archer deck gunners that coast will often opt for a rush instead. These two builds do a good job at negating the effect of artillery just by advancing quickly and winning the game before they get value. The single entities can dodge artillery shots, and the fact that the build has so many threatening elements like ethereal armor, flying bombers, and Mournguls means that there are a lot of different things factions have to prepare for to do well. This leads us to the adaptation where players begin foregoing artillery to take effective counters against the various coast rush tools. This Empire build can defeat crabs with their ranged tools, sirens with the bright wizard, and flyers too just with the sheer quantity of ranged tools. Thankfully though, all of this infantry is very low armored, which means that the Vampire Coast ground bombers are effective basically always, thus giving Vampire Coast enough of an edge to make this matchup even at the highest levels. This Wood Elf build, on the other hand, achieves a similar style of play to Empire and High Elves, but their magic damage is on their infantry, and their archers are effective against both sirens and crabs. That's because of the Hagbane tips and the Starfire shafts, which severely weakens the Vampire Coast ability to rush. Since that's more of a non-issue for the Wood Elves nowadays, it means that they can fully commit to archer rushes, which will kill the Vampire Coast frontline fast enough to deny deck gunners and artillery any value. Dwarves handle Vampire Coast rushes too, but because of a different reason. That is because of the Slayers, who trade well into Sirens, Mournguls, and Crabs alike. Their front line too, with their high armor, high leadership, and shields, mean that they don't have to worry about handgunners or bombers, which means Coast have to resort to other styles of play to do well. Now, how will Kislev emulate these styles? For reference, there's a link to Kislev's roster breakdown in the top right. Now, armored Kossars will emulate Dwarf Warriors with their shields and high leadership, and they will also shut down Vampire Coast gunbat play, which is a very important tool for their rushes. Ice Guard bring magic damage, so Sirens will be less of a problem, and Streltsy will be their main anti-armor tool. So Kislev seems like they'll be in pretty great shape against the Vampire Coast rush, but can they beat artillery and deck gunners without artillery of their own? I think the answer is going to be yes on this one, and we can see an appropriate comparison with the Wood Elves. I expect Kislev will be fielding a ton of cheap units here, using essentially a Dwarf Warrior frontline with a mixed backline of Kossars, Streltsy, and Ice Guard. Most of these units don't have to worry about Scurvy Dogs either because of their high melee stats. So even though Kislev's cavalry is a bit more expensive and susceptible to something like a Necrofex Colossus, their main infantry corps is going to be more than enough to take down Vampire Coast. And that's going to be it. If you enjoyed, feel free to check out my other content.